Happy to have everyone here. I don't know if everybody is aware of who I am, but my name is Leann Wolff. I am out of Alberta, Canada. I actually have a cattle ranch, and human design bumped into me in 2012, and it has just kept me in its grips ever since. So today I want to go over ideal clients and play around with fractals and niching. So I'm going to share my screen, and one thing that I ask is I love interaction, so there is a Q&A there. If you guys can start to ask questions, pull out any information from me. I am a right brain body, right-minded bodygraph, so questions are really important to me. So I am going to hopefully share my screen so that we can do this. Just put that to the other screen. Okay. Do you see anything yet? Gitas, Victoria?
Yes, it works perfectly. Yes, it works. Yeah, we see everything.
Awesome. Perfect. So I don't know if I can bring up the Q&A. Yes, I can at the same time. All right. So when we're talking fractals, fractals are actually along your nodal configuration. So the nodes of the moon are the movement that we are walking down this life in. But your niche is totally different. Your niche actually comes from your experience. So we're going to first go into the fractal line. We're going to talk about fractal lines. And then I want to pull out the information from you around your niche. So if you guys want to, in the Q&A, you can have a conversation in there or ask questions around your niche. The one space that I really want you to go towards is niches really are your experience. Fractal lines are the people that are already along your line of trajectory, but the niche comes from where you've been, what kind of experience that you've had, and your life situations and circumstances. We can also look at niching through the life cycles, but mostly I look at your experience to pull those niches out. All right, so who needs your solution? One of the first things that I always do with my clients in a coaching container is we never jump into your ideal client first. We always jump into your strengths, your attributes, your skills, the purpose. We go into all of the activations in the chart first so that we know who you are before we throw you outside of who you are to start looking and sourcing your ideal client. But today we are looking at ideal client, so let's jump in. So as we look at your nodes, the nodal trajectory is south node. This is something that many of you probably already know. South node is the beginning part of the life. However, that beginning part of the life never leaves you, okay? It never leaves you. It's always still going to be your foundation. And then at the second half of the life, we start to look towards the north node. However, I don't know if anybody here has heard of link nodes. Has anybody here heard of link nodes? My Q&A doesn't seem to want to pop up.
Yeah, so if everyone has some difficulties with Q&A, you can just type directly in the chat. And yes, it says somebody have not heard of link nodes.
Okay. So what happens in the design, in order to quote unquote link the personality, so the mind, with the physical body, we have these link nodes. So both of the south nodes go over to the environment, and both of the north nodes go over to the perspective. So anytime you're looking at this nodal configuration, you want to start to play in your mind and recognize, south nodes are usually the people. It's the environment. It is the people in your environment. And we're going to pop into that so that you understand who you're tuning to. And then on the perspective side, who you're going to see is always going to be the north nodes. So in the beginning part of the life, and you guys may know this because in the beginning part of the life, this is really the experimental phase. Whether you're a 6th line or not, the first part of our life is experimenting. It's kind of bumping into things. It's this phase where we try things out. And that's why the south nodes are so important, because it's the actual human beings that we're going to bump into. And then in the north node, this is the time where we're really starting to flower, okay? And in that flowering and in that maturing phase, it's more about, you know, not getting our hands dirty per se, like in the first part of our life, but in the second part of our life, it's like, now who do we actually see? It's like our aperture on our camera starts to become really clean, and we start to be able to see who we're designed to see. So as we're walking through this, take your chart, take your south nodes, put them over to the environment aspect, and take your north nodes and put them over to the perspective aspect. And this may help you as we walk through, so you know who you are attuning to as you walk along your path. Is there any questions that is in there, or anybody wants to share anything? I wonder if the chat will come up.
Yeah, so Victoria gonna help us with the questions if there's some come up in the chat. And guys, if you have any questions, please to ask. And Victoria gonna read them questions to Leann.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything there, Victoria?
So there is a very nicely said by Sani. She said, I know south node is the rear view mirror and the front window of the vehicle is the north node. So in the way we look forward through the north node activation.
Exactly. The north node becomes our perspective, and that south node is like, oh, those were all the people that we were bumping into. So now we can also lean into who we're supposed to see. Very good. So as we walk along this, and you guys are writing your copy for your websites, you're using your nodes to speak to your ideal client, okay? You're gonna recognize them and help you recognize, as you see your nodes, how to attune and use languaging so that those people actually lift their head and they start to engage with your copywriting on your website. They start to engage with your social media posts, so that inside that engagement, they recognize you, that you are along this nodal pathway with them, okay? So when you're looking at your nodes, you want to look at the line value, okay? Today, that's what we're going to focus in on today, is the line value. So this that you see on the screen, this is my chart. So first lines and third lines, those are going to be the attunements that I make along my nodal pathway. So we're going to talk about that so that you guys can start to use your copy and speak to those people. So if you have first lines along your nodes, you're going to want to speak to these people in a way where they can begin to recognize themselves. Now they're going to start to engage with your copy, because you are going to, first in the environment, you're going to bump into people that are authority figures, okay? They're going to actually be physical human beings around you that are authority figures. Now, if that first line is in your perspective, you're going to see these authority figures. Will you engage with them? Possibly. It's more about the perspective. You see them, you are learning from them. You're watching how they are authority figures in their world. And now you want to speak to that authority. So first lines, what do we know about first lines? Number one, they are insecure. Why are they insecure? Because they're seeking a solid foundation. Remember that first lines are the foundation of the hexagram. So without a solid foundation, the rest of the hexagrams, the lines are going to quote unquote struggle. They're not going to feel solid. So the first line is always looking for and studying and investigating and looking for that solid foundation. So in your copywriting, you're going to want to speak to this. Again, I have a 1 and a 3 along my nodal configuration. So I speak to getting foundational information, getting source material. I teach people deeply how to understand human design. And I speak to that on my website. And if any of you have bumped into me along a YouTube video, you'll see that that is my whole process, is teaching, making sure that they have a solid foundation, because a solid foundation provides security. And when you feel secure, you're more likely to go out and connect with your people, okay? So those that people watch to see how they behave. People are watching first lines. They want to know, do they have a solid foundation? Do they not have a solid foundation? How long have they been mastering their process? So if you have this along your nodal configuration, you're going to want to talk in language of mastery. What are some of the things that you've mastered? Talk to them about how they've mastered their vocation. Okay, and you will notice that if someone doesn't have mastery, they won't go out and connect with their people. They will still seek and investigate and try to study to get that foundation. So in your copywriting, you really want to talk to this, okay? Are you saying that because you have a first line, you're also speaking to other first lines? So Seth, I am saying, in my chart, I happen to have my profile is a 1-3, but along my nodes, it's also a 1-3, which doesn't happen all the time. So I represent that first line, but I also speak to first lines. And I bump into first line human beings, and I see first line human beings. So authority figures. Who's an authority in their field? Who's the best in their field? Who is mastered? Okay. And now I also talk about that in my copywriting and when I'm teaching people. Okay. I represent that first line, but I also speak to it. Does that make sense, Seth? So you have a first in your profile and first in your south node and first in your north node. Correct. So first lines are actually a very near and dear to my heart. I have 10 of them all together in my chart. So I understand them, and I can also speak to that. I can also put that in my copywriting because I really represent it, but I also know what those first lines really want. They want a solid foundation. They know that if they interact with me, that I'm not just, skimming over the surface. I do my best that they can learn deeply when they interact with my work. Okay. And you'll notice you're good at seeing through what others are trying to show you by covering up their fears. First lines have a lot of fear. Okay. Now, if we think in terms of the body graph and in the tones, okay, we want to just, I'm going to just take you a little bit deeper. This may be, some of you might know this already, some of you might not. But the first tone, the first line, the first color is really represented in the splenic center. And we know that the spleen wants to keep us healthy and wants to keep us really safe. And in order to do that, we have to have a solid foundation. We have to have a strong immune system. We have to have a strong sense of what we know and what we're representing. So in your copy, if you have a first line along your nodes, really speak to that depth that a first line really wants to go to. Okay. Now, if we take a look at the second line, so if you have a second line in either your south or north node, you're going to be attuned to natural talent. And in the design side, you're going to be around that natural talent. And in the personality side, you are going to see that natural talent. So now if we go deeper into the second line, second tone, second color, the second line is waiting. It's just waiting for something to take place. It's wanting to get called out. So the second line is actually how the immune system works. The second line seeks out, it's waiting. What is that next thing that's coming along that I'm going to get called out to then protect my talent, my skill, and my wellness? Okay. Second lines, what do we know about them? They are very shy. So in your copywriting, you're going to want to talk about shyness and boldness, because second lines, they have this natural gift inside of them. And as you see here, I have sports, music, there's a welder there, because anything that is natural for someone, they actually end up getting really shy because people poke at them. People begin to poke at them and go, oh yeah, you're just natural at this, right? So they get this brush off because other people aren't natural. They don't have that natural talent. So you want to speak to that natural talent in your copywriting, okay? They're very democratic, they are fair, okay? They do a lot of things very effortlessly, and because it doesn't look like they're quote unquote working for it, sometimes they don't believe in themselves. So you want to help them believe in their natural talent. And second lines really don't have to study. Okay, they don't really have to study. And what you're doing is you're going to help them in your copywriting, in your business structure, in how you present your offers. You're going to help them recognize that they can be bold and lean into those natural gifts and talents that they have. Okay. Nourishing them and enriching their lives is so key. So the minute a talent scouts out a talent and really helps them nurture that natural talent, that's when they get really loyal. Okay, so help them move from shyness to boldness. Third lines are all about change agents. The third line has to adapt, has to pivot. And I'm going to tell you that every third line that you're going to find keynoting in, the complete Rave I Ching, every third line, that is the material plane. Third lines have trial and error, and they become very resilient. So if there's a third line along the nodal configuration, you're going to want to help these people understand their adaptability, understand their resiliency. If it's in the design side, you're going to bump into these people. If it's in the personality, you're going to see them. You're going to recognize those people that are really resilient and those that are not. One of the things that's so important when you're copywriting and working with third lines, you're attracting them into your business, mistakes. Most likely, third line human beings have been reprimanded very deeply for the mistakes that they've made along the way. And because they've been reprimanded, they get very scared to make a mistake. And when they get very scared to make a mistake, they push for perfectionism. And when they push for perfectionism, they actually aren't adapting. They're not making, pivoting on changes that need to happen. So you want to speak to this in your copywriting. The mistakes are actually the best thing for a third line. The more problems that are present in your business, the more problems that are present in their business, in their lives, there's actually 10 solutions for every problem. So your job in your copywriting, as you're attracting these third lines, is to really get them to feel comfortable with those errors that they've made. Okay? Because transformation can only happen when they embody that process of making mistakes, leaning into the problem, leaning into solutions, and testing things out. A third line has to test things out. If they're not experimenting and they're not testing, they've lost their capacity to be able to pivot, be resilient, and adapt and become the change agent. Okay. Is there any questions? Do you guys have any questions? Feel like you're doing okay?
Yeah, no related questions just yet.
Okay. All right, fourth lines. I love fourth lines. These are the influencers. So if they're along your nodes, you are tuning to influencers. So in the design side, you're going to be around influential people. On the personality side, you're going to see influential people. Okay. These are the people, we know this about fourth lines, they are deeply, deeply connected to their communities. Okay. They love their communities, they love their friends, and that's where that entire influence starts to happen in their world. They really appreciate word of mouth. So you're going to want to speak to them and talk to them around, say, affiliate marketing or referral programs, because fourth lines, when they're walking along their life, that they want people to they want their network to introduce them to new people. They're not going to go out and seek new people. It is their community and inside of that influence that needs to be that word of mouth. Okay. They will also abdicate their power to others. They have a tendency to do that. Okay. And they really want to have trusted confidants in their world. Now, one of the things that Ra talked about, like very briefly in one of his PDFs, was how fourth lines, they have burnout as a part of their process, okay? So they can feel burnt out inside of their network. So being able to retreat, pull back, have time alone, again, all words that you can put in your copywriting. But what they're really designed to do, okay, what they're really designed to do is they're actually designed to burn out any resistance that they're noticing in their communities, in their family, and in their friends around how they're not progressing in life, how they aren't, embodying and adapting to the changes that are happening. So fourth lines have a capacity to feel burnout in their bodies, but they're actually designed to help their community burn out any of those blockages, mental blocks, whatever it is, financial blocks, all of those things, so that they can progress in their lives. So that's going to be a big hint and tip for you, so that you can help that fourth line understand, yeah, you might feel burnt out, but recognize you're here to help people burn out their blockages so that they can move forward. Okay? They're here to externalize that message to that friends and family network. So you're going to want to talk to that. How are they influencing that network? How did they communicate with that network? What do they want to externalize to that network? Okay.
I have quick questions.
Yes.
So Ross is asking, Leann, can you please clarify when you singularly refer to second line, third line, etc., but are you referring to the profile? Profile have 2 lines. Not sure if that makes sense. So I need some more context for clarity.
Okay, so this sounds like the profile, okay, but this is actually how you're going to speak to the people along the nodes. The nodes of the moon, you're going to want to look at those line values, okay, because those are the people that are walking along your pathway with you. So let's say, for example, you might be a 4-6, but you might have first lines and third lines in your nodal configuration. In your copywriting, you're going to want to speak to that first and third line in your copywriting, because those are the actual people that are walking along your street with you. So I look at the trajectory like a big road, because this is how Ra always communicated it. We can look at it like large cities like Paris, London, actually a city here in Canada, Montreal. They're really famous for having a big, long road. And the first part of the road is named one, like, let's say First Street. But the second part of the road is called Second Street. But it's the same road. You're walking along that same path. So anytime you see the nodes, those line values, so for example, 1s and 3s in the example that I'm using, they are actually walking along that road with you. You might be a 4-6, you might be a 2-4, you might be a 6-2 in your profile, but you want to look at that nodal configuration, because those are the actual human beings that you're going to see walking along the sidewalk, and you're going to bump into as you're walking along the sidewalk. So you want to speak to these people because they are right there on the street. And when you're copywriting in your business, and on your website starts to use these keynotes, those people begin to lift their head because they will recognize this stuff about themselves. They will recognize these words and this keynoting inside of their cellular structure. Does that help?
Ross, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think yes. Leann, would you
Yes.
maybe possible to show your chart the 229 page, and then because we have some people that joined maybe a little bit later, and maybe just explain where you can find the lines?
Sure.
Yeah, here, thank you.
Yep, I'll go back here. So we are talking about ideal client today. And ideal clients, there's a couple places that you're going to look for them. Number one is your fractal line, and that's what we're going to touch on here. Your fractal line is always along the nodal configuration. So for example, I am in my profile 1-3. This happens to be my chart. And in my fractal line, along my road, I still actually have 1s and 3s. So I understand them because I represent that and I can speak to that. But this might not be the same configuration in your chart. Your profile might be totally different than what your nodes are. Probably 80% of the time that's going to happen. So you want to understand those nodes and those people that are walking along that path so that you can keynote to them, so you can speak directly to their cellular structure. Okay.
Okay, and Seth is asking, I noticed that I have the same lines in my environment and in my perspective. Is that normal, consistent?
I don't know if it's really normal or rare. I would just say it's natural for your chart. So what is the line value that you have, Seth, in there along that nodal configuration? Did he say anything, Victoria? So if you,
no, didn't.
No?
Sorry.
Okay. So if, say, for example, if along your nodes, which I have seen this before, it's all 1s, okay? Or it's all 6s. Then your copywriting and your website becomes like really, pinpointed because you're speaking to one aspect of humans. Okay, so look at it as like a real simplification that you can do on your website and on your copywriting and in your social media posts. Does that help you, Seth? Let's go into the fifth line. So fifth lines, you're going to attune to messengers. Okay, there's going to be messengers around you on the design side, and there's going to be messengers that you see in your personality. Okay, so these people, remember this. What do we know about fifth lines? They are so deeply, deeply concerned about their reputation. And I'm going to give you some hints and tips here with the fifth line too, because I think they're very fascinating human beings. So because they're very concerned about their reputation, practical solutions are so important to them. So in your copywriting, talk to that. Talk to how maybe they have some fear because they're scared of their reputation. Maybe in the past, they've taken on clients, or they've worked with things, or they've had friends in their lives or relationships that their reputation was tarnished. So now you get to help them recognize that it's all about the practicality of who they are and the practicality of their message. However, they're not for everyone. Remember, Ra was a 5-1. So he deeply exuded that heretic energy, and he talked about that heretic energy. Heretics are scared. They're scared to speak their message because deep inside that cellular structure, there is this scared aspect of, I'm going to get hung in the square if I say something wrong. Okay? Because everybody sees them as a savior. So in your copywriting, maybe they have this savior complex. Okay? They're also very seductive. So if their messages aren't practical and they're seducing people, and then their reputation is being tarnished, you want to help them refine that message to make sure that it is very practical. Okay? They are always outside of the box. Heretics are always thinking outside of the box. They're sharing solutions that are designed to be universalized. What does that mean? For example, Ra and his neutrinos. He talked about neutrinos. Nobody had heard about them. They were like a concept that wasn't mainstream. He kept talking about it. Then the scientific community recognized, oh, neutrinos have mass. Oh, neutrinos are like these little tiny pockets of information. And he had been talking about it for at least, I want to say at least 5 to 7 years before like it became mainstream in the scientific world. So that's what a heretic does. So our fifth lines, they have deep messages, but they get very, very nervous around presenting that because they're like, well, it's not widely talked about. Well, exactly, because fifth lines are designed to bring that out so it can be universalized. The other thing I want to say here is projections. Fifth lines are designed to be projected upon that whole expectation. There's an expectation there, okay? So when Ra would sit in a room of fifth lines, he could feel, right? He could feel all these expectations. And it used to really bother him as a fifth line. He would get really bothered around all these expectations that people had of him. Oh, I'm going to save you, blah, blah, blah. They all thought that. Until it was that very moment that he recognized, hold on a minute. How about I call them out on that expectation so that they can recognize that they have that within them? So your fifth lines, when you're working with them along your nodal pathway, you want to help fifth lines understand they have an advantage. They have a huge advantage because the people that bump into them show their expectations. And when they show their expectations, you can easily recognize, oh, yep, I have the solution for you or not. Okay, I have the solution for you or not. And as a coach, it's really easy to call out that expectation and help them move past any blockages that they may have around that expectation. Okay? So others are projecting expectations, help them in that whole practicality of the message. So if fifth lines are along your nodes, recognize keywords like savior complex, solution-oriented, reputation. Now all of a sudden they will lift their head and they will be able to connect with your website and your social media presence.
Okay, before you go to
Yep.
the next slide, we got quite a few questions to go through. So, yeah, do the gates of the nodes matter in this regard?
They do, but today I'm not going to go over that. You want to look at the gates because you want to understand what's the energy around that. So for example, let's say you had the 21st gate in your notes. That's all about control. So who are you going to bump into? You're going to bump into people that feel like they need control or that they're out of control. Maybe you have the 58th gate along your nodes. Okay, 5 minutes left in your meeting. Uh-oh. And
no, don't worry, we can continue.
okay, good. Maybe you have the 58th gate in your nodal configuration. You want to look at, do they feel vital? Do they not feel vital? Is there any joy in their life? Is there not joy in their life? So you can take that gate as well as these simple keynotes of the lines and really start to begin to put that into your copy so that your ideal client lifts their head. Go ahead, Victoria. Is there any more?
Yeah, how about our Mercury gates with regards to our copywriting?
Mercury is your voice, okay? So it is your emanation of your voice in the way you communicate. So yes, Mercury gates are present because anything that's activated in your chart is going to be present in your copywriting. But today we're just looking at that ideal client because the Mercury gates show how you communicate. Now, who are you communicating to? That's the important piece along the nodes. Go ahead, Victoria.
There is the question, what software and view are you getting this chart from to check the nodes?
So I grew up with the Maya Mechanics from Jovian Archive. But I know Geetis on the platform here as well. You guys can get the charts and be able to do charts right here on the bodygraphchart.com. And
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. Because I'm interesting as well. Could you please just, if it's possible, to click on that link on the chat? I'm not sure if you're able to share, because you will see the chart, and maybe there's a random chart, and maybe you can help to tell the lines to help them to find the lines. Let's say I shared a link on a chat.
Sorry, a link to what? Sorry.
To the chart.
To this chart?
No, yeah, to different charts. And maybe if it's possible to open for you. I'm not sure if it's gonna land. The reason I'm saying, but maybe it will be able to show how they can find the lines. Yeah, it is a test chart. Yeah, that's correct. It's a test chart in the chat.
There's a test chart in the chat. I don't have any charts. That.
No. Are you able to see the link that they send you in the chat?
Nope, I can't see anything in the chat. The last message I see in the chat is Seth.
Okay.
Oh, don't worry. Just continue. Yeah. Continue.
Okay. Sorry. Oh, there we go. There, I just refreshed it. I'll see if I can bring it up, if it'll come up, and then we'll look at it for sure.
Yes. So as an example, in this chart, where you can see the lines.
So right here in the nodes. So it'd be a 1
and 1, yeah,
and a 2.
Okay.
This is a great example. Thank you very much.
Yep, no problem.
Sorry, I just messed your presentation
okay.
up.
It's okay. So Victoria, how about I do the 6th line first, and then we'll go into some more questions. Would that be okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Let's do that, and then if there's, we'll go to the questions. So let's just finish up with the 6th line. What do we know about the 6th line? Well, they're role models. Now, for the first part of their life, for the first 30 years, life has bumped into them, right? They really operated like a 3rd line. So they might be really, really scarred, for a lack of a better word, because they weren't really built to be a 3rd line, unless of course they were a 6-3. But if they're a 6-2, they're not really built for that. So you want to speak to that whole 3-part life. First part, things get bumpy. Second part, that's when they're really maturing and they're starting to take that wisdom from the first part of their life and they're starting to implement it in their life. And then the last part is really about flowering, where, you know, I shouldn't probably swear on here, but it's like you just don't give an F, right? It's like life is just, it is what it is. You've matured into your life. And that's really what a role model does, is they show how experience and embodiment is actually really the best part of the whole entire life, because now you can help other people because you are the role model for that movement. So in your copywriting, on your website, you really want to speak to these 3 parts of their life, because people trust a 6th line, especially after the age of 50, where they really are leaning into that role model energy. People really trust them. And 6 lines, they do not like hypocrites, okay? They don't like people that say, oh, I did this or I did that. No, they want to see that whole embodiment process, okay? And what the 6th line really is, if we look at this in the tonal configuration, the 6th line is the shores, okay? The tone and the color, it's the shores, it's the horizon. 6 lines are always, always just waiting for the next transition. They're the transition line, okay? So they've done the trial and error, they've matured through it, and now they're flowering. So you want to talk to that. And if you're working with young 6 lines that are, you know, between 0 and 50, in those first 2 parts of their life, just, you know, really give them space and allow them to make the mistakes, to have life bump into them, okay? And to then really go to that roof and mature in that energy field and that wisdom. So in your copywriting, you can talk all about that. 6 lines are very creative, okay? They're trustworthy. And especially once they get to that 50-year stage, that life cycle when they're in their Chiron, they are, it's like they're in this Buddha energy, right? They're not of the world. They are just sitting with the world, okay? All right, so I'll stop my screen share, or maybe I'll leave it up. I'll leave it up if there's any questions, and then we can go back and forth.
Okay, so the person has three and one lines in the note. So the main question is, am I speaking to both 3s and 1s, or
Yes.
one or the other?
Yep, you're speaking to both.
Okay.
Because again, what you're going to notice, at the beginning we talked about link nodes. The south node, you want to take both your south nodes and put them over in the environment. And you want to take both your north nodes and put them into the perspective. So the north nodes are who you're going to see. So you're going to speak to that. And in the environment, that's who you're going to bump into. That's the people that are going to be around you, and you want to speak to that. Because basically, again, they're walking along the street with you. So how can you get them to lift their head? Well, you get them to lift their head and look at your website and your copy, because they recognize those keynotes in their life.
Okay. Is the messaging catered more to the people on our design nodes, since that's who we are around, or is it also the personality nodes? I understand that's who we see.
It's going to be both. It's going to be both. Because all of those are along your fractal line.
I think other questions been answered.
Okay.
Yes, I'm asking some examples, I think, about, can you please give me more information about if they are 6-3?
A 6-3. So
Yeah.
if there's a 6 line, again, it's role model energy that you want to speak to, but you also want to speak to change agent, adaptability, resilience. So any of these keynotes, when you put that in there, one of the best words I like is anarchist. Because what is the third line doing? They're always testing. That's what the business world does.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, you just showed the third line example. That was one of the requests.
And now I'm just going to throw in something. I know that we only have an hour here, and I recognize that. So now this is your fractal line, okay? Now your niche is totally different, because I just want to throw that in there. Your niche is your experience, okay? So my assumption, and I shouldn't assume this, probably most of you on this call are coaches, right? Or your service providers working with a particular niche of people. So your niche is going to come from your experience. So for example, I'm going to use myself because that's just what I'm going to do. I'm not a parent. I've never had children. So for me to come out and be like a child coach or a family coach, can I do that? Do I have the knowledge and the wisdom of all the human design material? Yes, totally do. But that's not my experience. My experience is business. My husband and I have built 2 multi-7-figure businesses in the last 32 years we've been together. In the last 15 is when we went into business. But that's my wheelhouse. That's my niche. So that's why I help businesses and entrepreneurs, because that's what I know. So when you're looking at niche is totally different than your fractal line. Niche comes from your experience. So maybe, you're a mother, or you're a business owner, or you are someone in tech. That's where you're going to lean into. Those are the niches that you're going to lean into. Okay, does that make sense to everybody here on the call? If there's any questions about that?
Not related to the niche, but the question that is, in the past, I was told that as 6-3 profile with a gate 12.6 in my conscious sun, that I would look to speaking to the gate 15.1. What I'm hearing from you is to speak to 35.3 and 35.6 in my north node, and as well as to 5.3 and 35.6 in my south node.
Yes.
And not the gate 15-1. Am I understanding that correctly?
So I would have to see your chart for sure, but you're going to want to speak to the nodes. Now your sun, what that's doing, okay, the personality sun is this radiating factor. So anything that like your nodes you're also representing, but all of the planets and your sun and earth, okay, and then the magic squares, what you are representing that. So everything that you do, how you teach, how you present yourself comes from that energy. The nodes, that's who you're speaking to. Again, I would have to look at your chart because it depends. If the sun is in an undefined center and it is a dormant gate sitting there, then that's a whole different ball of wax around profitability. But you want to be talking to that nodal configuration.
Okay, and what about Uranus opposition? Does our messaging take those nodes into account when that time comes?
Okay, so when we start looking at life cycles, your natal chart has like just think of it as like a little octave boost that happens in those life cycles. So yes, you can add the flavor of your life cycle nodes into your copywriting. You definitely can, because it's like there's going to be this it's like a new movie set is going to be present. Okay, but don't get yourselves too confused, right? Don't get yourself too confused. Really focus in on your natal chart, and then if you want to look at your life cycles, you definitely can. And then just kind of give it like a little bit of a boost. So maybe you go from 1s and 3s in your natal chart, okay, along the nodes. And now all of a sudden your Uranus opposition has 6 lines. The whole thing is a 6 line. So you can bring the flavor of a role model into your copywriting and into your website.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.